Hi, we're going to try something a little different today. I'm calling this a knit and chat. I'm going to get out my current knitting project. We're going to talk a little bit about creativity and specifically how it relates to both knitting and writing. Because I have some thoughts about the two and they relate a bit. So if you have some kind of crafty project you'd like to grab to work on while we chat, feel free, hit pause, go grab your knitting, your crocheting, your embroidery, whatever it is that you might be doing, and let's talk. Today we're talking specifically about starting over. So I'm working on this sweater. It's a top-down raglan knit sweater. The pattern is from Julia Pirro. I believe her channel is called Knitting with Essenique. I saw her YouTube video about it first, and then I bought the pattern on Etsy, and I'm really happy with it. But the reason why I'm making this video here about starting over is that this is actually my second attempt. I had gotten to about this point, at least finally I've surpassed where I was before, when I realized I had made the ultimate, just ridiculous mistake. So the mistake I made, it's funny to me now. Essentially, I used completely the wrong size needles. So it said on the pattern, it gave, and this is no fault of the pattern maker, it said 4.5 millimeter or US size 9. My brain just went completely combined those things, and it was 9 millimeter. Which is so funny to me now. I look at this sweater now and I'm like, yes, the gauge looks like a sweater gauge. And when I was making it before, it was like, wow, this is a very open weave. There's a lot of space there, because I was using needles that were double the size of what they're supposed to be, which is not what you use for this weight of yarn. So anyway, what this relates to is a couple things, because I was watching Brandon Sanderson's interview with Tim Ferriss around the same time this all happened, and he mentioned in there getting to the end of a book. And of course, if you know Brandon Sanderson, and I haven't actually read any of his books, but I do think I'd like to give it a try. I think I'll start with Tress of the Emerald Sea, because he did say that was a great entry point. He talked about getting to the end of one of his books, one of the massive ones, 300,000 words or whatever. So a couple of my novels, and realizing that he had written a character with the wrong personality, and then having to go back and start over again after some time. And I just thought, as I was listening to that interview, I was like, man, that would just be devastating to get to the end and realize you have to start the whole thing over again. And then I developed a bit of a fear of that. I thought, wow, I'm glad I haven't had to do that. I thought, well, there are probably people who haven't liked my books who have thought I should do that. All these sorts of thoughts that you have that spiral. And then I had to do just that with my knitting project. I didn't get all the way to the end, thankfully, but I did have to rip the whole thing out. And it made me realize a couple of things there, which is both with the knitting and with the story, when you have to rip it all out, start over again, you're not really starting over again, right? So first, I'm really grateful that this yarn has no problem with frogging, which I think is such a cute word for ripping it out and starting over again. This is Wool of the Andes, and I had just recently read a review of it, because I was like, man, this wool was really affordable, and is it as good as they say it is? Because it feels great to me. I love working with it, but is it really And I was reading a detailed review where someone specifically mentioned that it responded really well when I had to frog it. And so I was like, okay, that boosts my confidence. So I'm still using the same materials, which is similar. If you're starting over a book, you're still using the same materials. You're still using the same outline. You're still using the same, probably a lot of the same words. But, if you have to change a character's personality, it's not going to be a complete and total, okay, throw the whole thing away and start over with completely different plot, different setting. All the characters are different. You just change every single thing. You're changing in that case, you're changing one thing. You're changing the character's personality. Here, I changed one thing. I changed the size of the needles and decided to actually try using the right ones. Also, by the way, this is the last frogged ball of yarn. So that's exciting. I'm about to, once I get through this, I'll get to actually start using a new one again. So happy days. Let's see, what are the other points, the other metaphors there? I improved when I started over again. This all went a lot faster. I also ironed out another mistake where I the way I was casting on before was fine, but not for doing magic loop. And I'm not going to try and explain what that is because I saw how my husband's eyes glazed over when I tried to explain magic loop technique for knitting a neck hole of a sweater on a circular needle that's too big for it. He was like, I cannot understand what you're saying. And I'm like, yeah, I couldn't understand it the first couple times either. Anyway, I cast it on in a better way that worked really smoothly with that. It's all just been going so much better this time around. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, I learned a lot from the experience. Also, let's see some other things. With a book, if you know that there's a mistake, my experience, what I tend to do in a first draft, I'm like, oh, this isn't ideal. This isn't going quite how I want it to. I don't stop there and go back to the beginning. I make a note that okay, we're going to have to revisit this particular thing, like this character's backstory or something. We'll revisit this on a future draft, but I'm going to keep plowing ahead because if I keep going back and editing, we're never going to get to a finished first draft. Now with this knitting project, could I have done that? Could I have just been like, all right, I'm going to push through and just do it the way I'm doing it? I only very briefly considered that. I was like, do I want to have a giant overstretched oversized sweater? And I was like, no, I actually don't. I love a comfy fit, but I am not investing all this time and energy in something just to make it oh yeah, that's a sweater I can sleep in, but I can't really wear it out because it looks, someone made a distinction. It looks homemade, not handmade. It looks homemade. So that was another aspect of that. I guess the only real comparison I could think of for myself with having to frog the whole thing and start over is if I realized that I was typing with my fingers on the wrong keys and I can't just easily fix that, I do tend to see people on WriterTube talk about talk about doing complete rewrites, start writing a whole draft, a zero draft or first draft, and then scrapping it and starting over again. And I don't, that gives me so much anxiety hearing that because I'm like, oh, no word written is ever wasted. I'm always going to want to revisit them and go okay, let's refine this. Everyone has different processes. I don't need to compare the way I do things to the way someone else does things. For me, I would rather rework something than completely scrap it and start over because I would be afraid that in the starting over, I would be like, oh, I'm so tired of this. I've already done it. I don't know. That might just be a little aside there. Another thought that I had about knitting as it relates to writing for me is that wow, as soon as I started, this is my first wearable project. I've made some baby blankets, and that's about it. This is the first article of clothing, and I love the color. It's one of my very favorite colors. I'm so excited about the fit. I love the fact that there's lots of my own cat's hair just woven into it because that, will keep me extra warm. But similarly to when I started writing my first novel, I was like, oh, I also want to write this book, and I also want to write this book, and I also want to write this book. And I'm sure that's partly how I ended up, with book 1 in 5 different series out, where I was like, okay, probably should continue with some book 2s here and there. But I started getting excited about the future sweaters that I want to make. And I probably won't start another project until we either move back to the States or I at least go back for a visit, because I bought this yarn from Knit Picks, the website, which I loved that experience of getting to pick from so many options, because I really didn't want to do this with acrylic. I really wanted it to be wool and have it be something that would last for a long, long time. So I like that website. I wasn't able to find pure wool here currently. But also, it's spring now. It's going to get hot soon, and I'm not going to want to be knitting in the summer. But anyway, I just got so excited about these other sweaters I want to make. And like already I know the next one I want to do is going to be a cardigan, and it's going to be like fuchsia because that's another one of my very favorite colors. And the thing is, like I have so many tabs open on my phone with all the future projects I want to do and patterns I need to get and stuff. This even more so than writing, but like similarly to writing, you really got to enjoy the process, because if you're like, I'm just doing this, I'm just putting in this time because I want to get to the end result where I have the finished sweater, like I'm going to miss the meditative nature of knitting once this project is over and I have the finished sweater. Well, first of all, it'll be summer, and so I will not be wearing it. But I'll be like, what do I do with my hands now? Like what can I work on now? So that's a great reminder, I think, similar to the writing. It's like, yes, definitely, I do want to have the finished book. I want it to be sitting on my bookshelf next to my other books. I want to see how cute they look together, what the cover art this one gets is. But I don't want to just rush through it and have it be over. And with this, like I know I can't just rush through it and get to the end, because I will like destroy my hands in the process. What the first big project I did was a baby blanket for my first niece, and I was really trying to get it done before Christmas, which is kind of funny because she was born at the end of January. So I'm like, you can wait a little bit. Like she doesn't need it a month before she's born. Anyway, I was doing such intense knitting those last couple days before Christmas, like hours and hours a day, that I just remember looking at my hands and being like, never again. And I didn't knit for a very long time. So I don't want to burn myself out on knitting, just like I don't want to burn myself out on writing, just like you probably don't want to burn yourself out on your crafty projects or your creative projects. So it's like as much fun as it is. And this is super fun. And I love seeing it get longer. Like I hold this up at the beginning and end of every knitting session, and I'm like showing my husband, I'm like, look, it looks like a sweater. Look, it looks like a sweater. And like at this point, we're so close. We're not that many rows away from doing the bottom ribbing. And I'm so excited about that. Just, it's so fun. I love it. But I don't want to be so excited about it that I'm like, okay, I can't sleep. I just have to stay up all night and knit, because it's not really the reality for making a sweater or for writing a book, that like if you just sacrifice basic human functions like eating and sleeping, you can finish it all in one sitting. Like you can finish reading a book in a sitting, sure. You can't finish writing a book in a sitting unless it's a short book, And I say that as someone who did have a really fun time writing half a book in 3 days. I'm like, is that sustainable? Well, I haven't done it again yet, so I don't know if it's sustainable. The point is just simply, I guess, to summarize this video, enjoy the process, and don't be afraid of having to spend a little longer in the process before you get to the finished product. So if there is some bit that needs to be redone or something that needs to be fixed in post, that's okay. That's okay. It's perfectly fine, because this knitting gives me something to do with my hands, which ends with a beautiful result. And writing gives me something to do with my thoughts and feelings, and it ends with a beautiful result, I hope. So, yeah. Happy crafting, happy writing, and maybe I'll be back here again with a future knit and chat to show you this bad boy all finished, or maybe you'll just see him in a future video when it's cold. And maybe this will be a semi-regular thing we do. Maybe next time you'll see me working on a fuchsia cardigan. I mean, it could happen, Stranger things certainly have happened. So, okay, put down the knitting. It's time to get back to work, but it's just so, okay, no, we're putting it away. It's time to get back to work. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you again soon.